Today, 2 Decent Blokes.
All right, well, the Matildas Soccer World Cup win against Brazil pushed women's sport into the headlines, but it's definitely not reflected in their earnings. Each Matilda was paid just $500 in match fees. Compare that to the $7,500 their male counterparts would have received. Now, if they make it to the final, the girls will get $5,500 each. The blokes will get $69,000 each. How can anyone justify this item?
Okay. Right off the bat, we just got in swinging, and I understand it's a news segment, maybe, so they have to really kind of cut. But what do you think about the introduction?
Okay, so just for our audience, right? For context, the Matildas are the Australian women's soccer team. And the game that she was referring to is the game that they played at the 2019 FIFA Women's World Cup, where the Matildas, Australia, beat Brazil 3-2. And how much the girls earned from that win. And she is saying they only won, what is it, 500?
Yeah,
around 500 Aussie dollars, I guess. And if the Australian men's team had played the same game, group stages, against the Brazilian team, they would have been given 7,500. So all those gasps of the difference in pay between the men's team and the women's team. And she asked a very interesting question, which we are going to attempt to answer. How can anyone justify this? How can anyone justify this?
Right off the bat, I want to challenge the notion that this is how we should look at it. Because, you see, one thing that this situation has led us to at least be forced into is having to make two choices, or having to have very few choices of saying, if the men are playing and the women are playing, they should be making equal, and not looking at the other alternative outcomes that could actually come because of the varying things that obviously affect the outcome, the input that we are going to talk about. So they care much about, can you compare men and women? Should we be comparing men and women, or should we just be comparing the women's product and just looking at it and looking at what it should be producing or what it can produce for what it is? And that's probably my thing. But anyway.
Yeah, but all this conversation is happening within a political system, socio-political system, where there is a lot of talk about the discrepancies and the disparities between the amount of pay that women in general get and the amount of pay that men in general get. There are a lot of assumptions that make that even a conversation. And if we confront those assumptions one by one, I think we can get to the bottom of the truth. Is it really that women are given less money because of some sinister sexist reason? Or there is another reason why, in this case, the Aussie girls were given less money than the Aussie men would have made?
And I understand that, because I think let's detach from soccer and athletics, because it's difficult sometimes for people to comprehend what we're doing. In order for you to compare things, they have to be the same. Mm-hmm. You cannot compare men and women in the arena of sports, because they inherently play the same sport, but it's played differently. That's why some sports you find different rules actually for men and women, and even different like goals or lines or measurements or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. You can't, if you have a banana, you can compare a banana to another banana maybe, or you can compare another banana to another fruit maybe, but you can't compare things that are not related. Men and women don't play football the same.
If you really try to get serious about this conversation, even two bananas can be different. Was this harvested in Uganda or in Brazil? They're going to be different kinds of bananas. They're both going. So you have to be nuanced when you are talking about these things. Yes,
Yeah, wait up before you go away. It's the same thing, right? You have bananas that are organically made and bananas that are not organically made. The same bananas don't, those bananas don't have the same
You
price
mean
in the shop.
bananas where they use artificial fertilizers?
Exactly.
And
They don't have the same price, and they
yeah,
don't have the same price for certain reasons. One of which is the cost it takes to grow them is quite different. Number two, also the taste that they offer is quite different, but they are all bananas. Should we
yeah,
go equalizing how much they are sold? People understand this when it's like things like that. I'm sure most people
yeah.
that buy organic food, they will make the point for this, but they don't seem to understand it in this arena where it's like you are not comparing the same thing. Why would the outcome be the same if the input is not the same?
There is an inherent assumption that if there are differences in outcome, that should mean there is some sort of discrimination happening in the process. In this case, sexism. Sexism cannot account for even 1% of pay differentials. Let's do a logical test here. Logical test. If it's indeed true that corporations out there are here to suppress women and want to pay them less, let's say for the same job, a man is making $1 and a woman is making 75 cents, as they say. If that is a universally accepted truth as it appears to be and as it seems to be, wouldn't you think that if you were to start your own company and you have to hire 3 people to work with you for, to provide goods and services for your customers, and you have an option to spend $3 hiring 2 men, or to spend much less, 75 cents each, on women, who would you want to hire? Because you are interested in trying to reduce your costs and increase your profit. So wouldn't you think that if this was a universally accepted truth, that men and women would do the same job, who produce the same amount of goods, are as productive as each other, are getting differences in pay? Wouldn't you think that people would just hire women and not hire men?
Okay, so the assumption that you are making when you consider the things you've already pointed out, Vincent, that if it is cheaper to get a woman to do the same job as a man, which all of us understand that people act economical and rational financially when given a choice where they can buy something cheaper. Like, I don't think there's anyone that can say more men, or men in general, and even the women that are hiring, because there's a lot of women that have businesses that are hiring more men, or that are paying more men, for example, for these things, do not care about saving their money more. They care about just having women be paid less and having men pay more. Like, how can
It doesn't
you,
make sense.
who do you really know that actually thinks? If you can name one person that you can say, this person, I know they're willing to pay a man a lot more and forgo actually making profits or making money, I would really challenge you.
Let's take. I would want to take this conversation back to this game. The Matildas complaining that they are being paid less, right? There seems to be an assumption that prices for things are set arbitrarily. You hear this in the news when they talk about corporate greed, or the billionaires are greedy because they are charging certain prices for certain things. The greed of corporation, the greed of the pharmaceutical industry. You hear that a lot, as if to say, okay, just because I am a greedy person, I can start a company and start charging whatever prices I want. If that was the case, everyone, it would be so easy to be rich. You would just set up your own hot dog stand, and instead of charging 50 cents for a hot dog, you charge $1 million. And with one hot dog after, you're a millionaire. But we all know it doesn't work that way. Just because you are greedy doesn't mean that you are going to get that money from people. You can do illegal things. You can do things that are maybe, morally questionable, but it doesn't mean people are going to pay for your things anyway. So in that line of thinking, what are prices really? Prices are signals. that point to the inherent scarcity of things. When we are talking about human beings, what is inherently scarce is labor, because there is always work to be done, but there is a shortage of labor, and the prices come to point out that scarcity so that we can be able to economize our resources. What do I mean by this? If you look at on a purely economic standpoint, demand and supply, what is more demanded between women's football and men's football? What is more demanded? Men's football, right? You can see by attendance records, statistics, and because men's football is in high demand, what does that mean? If something is high in demand, it means it's going to call for a higher price because many people want it. So it's going to cost the people who are interested in men's soccer more money, which means the people that are delivering the service, the soccer stars, are going to earn correspondingly higher amounts of money. If you look at the women's side, women's soccer is starting to develop, which is a good thing. I love football more than a lot of things, and I'm happy to see women's football advance. I watch women's football all the time. But there's just not as much demand for women's soccer as there is for men's soccer. And that is shown in the prices. Now, these crusades for trying to equalize things, they go at the finishing line and try to equalize the outcomes, but they are never interested in equalizing the inputs. Because even within the men's game, you will see, for example, within the same team, Cristiano Ronaldo will earn $400,000 a week, and his teammate that he is playing with week in, week out will be getting $50,000 a week.
They are
playing the same games,
sessions,
the same minutes, the same
instructions from the coach.
But the people that are willing to, Cristiano Ronaldo demands a higher market value. His skills, his commercial value, and all those things put together, Manchester United decided he is worth this amount of money. That worth is not decided by Cristiano Ronaldo and his greed. It's decided by the productivity and the amount of demand that he commands. And so when we are looking at pay differentials in sports, it's much to do about whether or not that sport is in high demand or not.
And I think the other thing that has to be pointed out on the Cristiano Ronaldo example you've already just cited is we don't get paid because we want to get paid certain things. We get paid because what we are doing is difficult to do for other people. So if you do something,
few people who are unwilling to do it.
So the difficulty of what you're doing and the willingness of everyone else to do what you're doing. So you might have something where you are doing something that people are not willing to do, like you're a janitor. People are not willing to actually do what you do. They're willing to do other things, or they look down upon it. Not saying that I think, that is inherently inferior. It's important work that actually keeps our society running. And, I salute everybody that's doing that. But people are not willing to do it. But if it was the only thing that would determine price, then janitors should be millionaires because no one wants to do it. But what they're doing is also not difficult. So a combination of the two will give you the market value of a janitor. And we can have our own, moral compasses about what is what, but that is inherently what drives prices.
Yeah, here is exactly. You're exactly right. Another thing that you might want to consider when it comes to why people get paid different amounts of money is because prices, they are signals, like I said in the beginning, right? So they incentivize and deter behavior. So, for example, if you are trying to choose a program to study at university, and maybe you choose, I want to study history, right? And you realize, like, after I get this history degree, the most I can make after I get out of college will be $20,000. But if I study physics, if I study computer science, for example, get right out of college, I'll be able to make $100,000. See, that $100,000 and that $20,000 it's a signal that is showing you the demand and supply matrix in the labor market. And they incentivize you to make a decision. They are signals for you to make a decision, right? So you get to decide, well, at 20,000, I would not be able to do this. It's not, compatible with my lifestyle. Then you can make a decision based on that, that knowledge that you are getting from prices. You choose to study computer science with the hope of earning more money, right? If you look at a different market, let's say, for example, in the housing market, when the government comes and says, okay, the rents that are being charged are too much, we are going to control the price. Remember, they are only controlling the price, and the price is a function to act as a signal to people to incentivize behavior or to deter certain behavior, right? So if the government comes and say, okay, all the apartments in this city that are one bedroom should not be more than $1,000, what incentives does that create? Now, a landlord doesn't need to upkeep his property because, number one, he cannot afford it, or people can still rent that place at that same price anyway.
They can't.
No.
I mean, the gender... I beg your pardon?
I can justify it.
Why?
Well, I tell you what, stars don't get paid more money because, a sport doesn't become interesting because the stars are paid more money. Stars get paid more money because the sport is interesting. Let me ask you this. How many of you guys on the panel know who our Australian Matildas are playing in the quarterfinals?
Don't.
No, because you don't care about it. Now, if you cared about it...
One thing I think he's pointing out, which is a very important thing, that sometimes I think our women in our society, especially the Western society, they have created a lot of noise around this inequality issue. And you can tell this is a feminine value that is being pushed on the world. Men don't care about equality. Men inherently understand the world is full of inequalities, and that's part of life. And I am willing to actually say...
Which men? Because Bennett certainly does not.
Well, a lot of the men that have now gotten onto this are feminine in nature. If you really looked at it, they're either men that cannot compete in society, or number two, they are men that have an agenda. They have something to gain from saying that we need equality.
Yeah.
I think
we definitely need equality, but what do you mean by equality?
That's the thing.
What kind of equality?
The equality that men want is the equality of opportunities. That is to say, you have an equal opportunity of doing something. So I remember Thomas Sowell saying, I have an equal opportunity of going and practicing to play golf like Tiger Woods would, but I do not have the equality of outcomes when he's on the course and when I'm on there. I'm not within a shouting distance of what he's able to do. That both people had the opportunity to go and work and apply themselves in an area, but he did not apply himself the same way that Tiger Woods applied himself, which is the problem that we have in our society. When people come and see Tiger Woods getting millions of dollars and getting incredible results, they say, no, they need to equalize the outputs, and they do not care to look at the inputs. It is robbery to go and steal or equalize the outputs of people who have put in work before, because you want to give people who did not put work in the inputs, who are getting very poor outcomes.
Exactly. And the crazy thing about this is, even if in the ladies' game, the women's soccer, if you are saying they want the same amount of money as men footballers, right? Among themselves, they earn different amounts of money. Mm-hmm. Of course, when they are playing for their national teams, they can get a flat fee. Each player gets whatever metric that they decide. That's one more thing that I want to point out. The arrogance that it takes for you to think you can be able to decide what amount of money should be given to which persons, as if you are some sort of god. The arrogance it takes is just unbelievable. But within women's soccer, at their clubs, they earn different amounts of money because people understand that although the work itself is the same, people have different levels of productivity in that job.
Mm-hmm.
That is why you can start a new job with the five of you can start a new job. 5 years down the line, one of you is going to to be promoted to be manager. You earn different amounts of bonuses and all those things. Nobody complains. Nobody says, I'm going to quit. Okay, people might complain, but people already understand that even though we are doing the same job, we have different levels of productivity. So you get paid not because you are doing the same work as it is described in your job description, but by how much value you create. That is why when they say, CEO pays are too much, why can't we pay our workers the same amount of money? Mm-hmm. And I'm always thinking, no, you are doing different things. Just because you work in the same company doesn't warrant that you get rewarded the same, because you are doing different things.
And I think when you talk about that, it's funny because most of the people that have something to say about most of these things have the very least of understanding of the very things they are commenting on. Take an example right here. The woman on screen right here, she has not gone to see any soccer games. She does not know who the females that are playing are and what team they are playing. She does not probably even, if I'm going on a whim, even know what soccer for the men is, because actually she did say it. She said she's never really seen it. She has now no idea what is the difference as far as the product of the men's game and the women's game. But she is sitting here on a national television talking to millions, offering an opinion about something she has no idea about, which is the primary problem. The condescension she speaks from, which I've seen in a lot of Western women, and it's gotten to most of the men, is something that can be described in this little phrase I saw today. It was actually in a comment section somewhere, where someone was saying, the modern women are like house cats. They display their fierce independence and yet completely and obviously are dependent on a system that they never have understood and they don't even appreciate.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing that you've seen in the women's soccer team in America, that the women in America, in the American soccer team, want to claim independence. They have no idea, obviously, what it really means to be independent in the sense that they want to be independent, because they actually would not be able to generate the same income they are getting right now if they were alone. Just the same as the WNBA is making losses and is being subsidized
by
but
the NBA.
But they are going and talking about we actually need more money, and it's like you don't even understand, or maybe you do understand, but you just don't care.
And also, it brings me to that case of the United States women's football team when they were asking to be paid the same amount of money that the men's team are being paid, and then the Football Association in the United States said, "Okay, we'll give you the same amount." And then they rejected it.
No, they offered them the same contract to which the men do
the same
have.
contract, which is essentially amounts to the same amount of
it
money.
Would not. It would not. That's why they rejected it.
Yeah, it would not, because of what they are producing.
Because they're not producing enough. Can you explain the men's system and the women's system? Because I think that one is really, I mean, the American soccer case is different from everything else, because the Soccer Association in America does have a lot of resources. So they get to actually pay the women in America. The women in American sports are complaining because they think they are unequal versus their male counterparts. But they're ignoring that they are also unequal compared to the other women they play in the World Cups. For example, the team that they beat 13-0, I'm not too sure which team it was an Asian team.
Yeah, I forgot which team that was.
Nepal or something. I'm pretty sure those ladies are not within any shouting distance of earnings to the
resources.
But instead of being grateful, which is usually the biggest problem, when you don't have any gratitude and you have envy, that's when you go and look at someone that is obviously way better than you. Because if you look at the Women's World Cup average attendance, for example, for games, they had like 17,000 people. I mean, my numbers might not necessarily be the same, but the concept is actually still very, still very sound and true. But most men's games were probably 47,000 in attendance. And not only that, the actual prices for the tickets are not even anywhere close. You were just showing me the statistic that in the final of the 2018 World Cup for the women's, for
2019 Euro.
No, it was
2019 Euros.
2020 Euros for the men and 2018 World Cup for the women. Was it not that?
Yeah,
because the World Cup was in 2018. No, 2019, sorry, because the World Cup for the men was in 2018. Yeah. Sorry, I had that mixed up. They had the VIP ticket prices at $50, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's the best seat you can get in the stadium. I mean, for the final game, the biggest game of the tournament.
Of a World Cup. And the Euros, which is just a European competition of the men, for the final, the VIP section was at like £955.
Like 1,000 euros,
which is, well, you would probably multiply that by more than 10 times the price. So for you to then come and say, why are we not paid the same after that? And I don't even want to talk about the advertising, slots, the cost that and the endorsements that go with these tournaments, and how big the differences would be too. For you to come and just start talking about, I need to get paid than them. What really needs to drive you is envy.
It is an
same jealousy and envy, which is ungodly, to be honest.
I think it is. It's an appeal to emotion. Most conversations around this area, they use emotionally powerful language that doesn't mean anything in the end. Are we saying that there are no differences in pay? Yes, there are differences in pay, but it's not because of sexism or some sort of discrimination. It's because people produce differently and people are different. Men and women are different. If you look at the base of it, for example, if you look in general terms about pay discrepancies, you realize that if you adjust for other things, like, for example, the fact that women, most of the time, they have to take some time off work to take care of babies. They lose income during that time, number one, and then they lose time of developing their skills and advancing in their career, which could earn them more money later on. If you look even in college faculties, the enrollment for different subjects, different disciplines and areas of study, careers that result in greater incomes, for example, most neurosurgeons, most software developers and engineers and other high-paying skills, they are mostly dominated by men. And no one is standing at the faculties and saying, no, women are allowed here. But most of it is just based on interest, number one. Some women are just not interested. And this is supported by the fact that women who never marry and women who go into these highly coveted and high-paying job skills, they earn as much as men. But you cannot just sit at the end and tally up how much women are being paid, how much men are being paid, and see the difference and say women are paid less than men. It is ridiculous at the face of it.
And I think one example I was actually pointing out at the time was of the other female players you will never hear their voices from. And I think this is actually the majority of most female players. Most of them, even in the American team, because I don't think all of them are as deluded as Megan Rapinoe about this.
I think most of them are.
Or the ones that really have something to voice will never obviously voice their concerns because it's just going against the status quo. And I mean, look at the whole thing they've made about going to the White House and everything. You would just be stupid to actually voice your concerns if you're in the women's team. But a lot of women, I've played college soccer myself, and I had women that we played college soccer with. And I understand this is not professional. but there were a lot of college girls that played in national teams. I had my good friend, she actually played for Ghana. Shout out to her. She's actually in Dallas from what I heard. She played for Ghana in the World Cup. It was an international tournament, I remember, and it was just surreal. You seeing someone you spend time with, she's actually at a FIFA World Cup, sanctioned event. For a guy to be involved in anything like that, we would never see him ever again because
there's a lot of competition for you to make it in the men's game.
Well, and also for you to play at that high level, you can't be found in college in some small town in Ohio somewhere. It just cannot happen.
You have to develop your skills when you are 11 up to the point, if football has to be the only thing you're obsessed with for you to make it.
And so I understand the two sports are different in the competitiveness. When my friend, when we would play, she would just fit right in with us, right? We are not national team type of players. We're just college players. Heck, there were guys that were even, that would look, when you play, you couldn't pick her out and say when she's playing with the guys that, oh my God, she plays, for a national team. She'll just fit in with us. You can tell she can play. But what I'm saying is, if you were to take a national team player for men and put him in among the men and even the women, you would easily see the difference. It's two different sports. So when people compare these things, the people that actually play the sport, I would bet you a lot of women that are not necessarily emotional understand why men are paid more. They understand to play in front of 3,000 people whilst the men play in front of maybe 60,000 or 100,000 people.
While we're on that note, I have a quote that I want to read. This was said by Melanie Leopolds. She is a German women's team midfielder, and she also plays for the Chelsea women's team.
So she plays for the German national team, right?
German national team. And she said this about this pay discrepancies in football. She said, I don't think equal pay is appropriate. You have to see what the men and the women bring in terms of money. With that justification, if I earn millions now, at the weekends, I play in front of 3,000 spectators. I would rather wish that we train on good training grounds, play in nice stadiums, and that the general conditions are the same. That involves fewer financial obligations and is easier to implement. This is also what is possible for women's football to be self-supporting.
This girl is just pragmatic. She understands that you can't make money. This is a question, kind of commenting on what she's saying, that she understands that it's going to be easier to get facilities improved.
Yeah, inputs. You can control inputs.
And also, she understands that it is charity.
Yeah.
It's not because they are producing enough money to be in those facilities,
it's just trying to help women activities and these things to just broaden our society. And
see, if you walk into someone's house and you don't have let's say you are stranded, you have no way of getting somewhere, you need help. The guy has a Tesla and he has a bike. You need him to help you. You don't ask for the Tesla, you ask for the bike. And the problem that we have is we have people that do not know where they are. The women are not in a position to be making, they are not in the position to be making these demands, but they're asking for the Tesla in your house. And you're looking at them like, why?
Yeah, the thing is, they still look at salaries as things that are decided by a central position where men are just like, no, why should we give them this?
Give them half or a little bit. And also there's a practical question to be asked. Remember, we went back to figures. If the ticket sales are giving us $50 for a VIP stand in a final, and men are getting 955, right? And let's say we don't take it anywhere else. By that very factor, we want the women to earn $955, just like the men.
Yeah.
If we have a $50 to $955 discrepancy. You say 955,000 or 955 only?
955.
Okay.
So the women's VIP ticket for the final is $50, and the men's is actually it's 955 euros. So let's just say maybe 1,000 to have a round figure.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. So my question is, if you have done any accounting or have any accounting background, you need to come up with a source of income to basically fill out this entire hole. My question is, where is this money going to come from for us to fit, for us to have these two people have the same outcomes? Because the rational one would be, can you take the 955 and give it to the women? Now, obviously, we know that's obviously not moral, and it's easier said than done. Where is the other discrepancy coming from? The $950 that we need to get to the equity that we are asking for. Who is going to pay it? Because you ask these women, the very same women talking about it needs to be the same. They are not going to watch other women play. Women themselves don't watch other women play. So my question is, where is this coming from?
And
where is this money from?
Here's the funny thing about it. If you take this conversation into a relationship, many guys will testify about this. Mm-hmm. If you are a man and you are making $100,000 a year, right? And your girl, your wife, your fiance, wherever she is, she's making, let's say, $50,000 a year, right? Mm-hmm. When you go shopping, there's not even a conversation about, well, you spend what you have, I spend my own money, you spend your own money. You can't do that. I mean, she'll break up with you. You're a stingy guy. Why should she be with you? Yeah. And for good reason, I really believe as a man, you should be able to take care of your girl and things like that, And
besides, you're in a relationship.
Right? You're in a relationship too, so there's that. But let's reverse this case. So women are okay with a man supplementing a woman's lifestyle financially. They're okay. Most women are okay with it. Mm-hmm. Most of them. Some are not. Most of them are. And they actually would want a guy who is able to do that. Mm-hmm. If you do the reverse, the girl is now earning $100,000 and the guy $50,000. Mm-hmm. I bet you will never see a dime of that amount of money. That is if you are able to even get into a relationship with that kind of girl. But that is exactly what is happening in sports. Men's sports are subsidizing women's sports, and they are still complaining and demanding more. But if it was the reverse, that was not going to happen.
That's my question. Like, who are you demanding that from? Because the thing is, you're either demanding it, what you're actually demanding is for the woman next to you or the man next to you to go watch something they are not interested in. See, that's basically what you're doing at the end of it, to support some ideal of equality for superstars who spend the money that we will never know, we'll never get, we'll never benefit from. Like, that's kind of my thing. Like,
and here's another thing. There is a difference between charity and profit making organizations, for example. So there is a strong drive. You should support women's sport, right? Mm-hmm. The advertisers, where most of the money comes from, they understand that there's a difference between someone who is there to genuinely invested in the culture of this game and someone who is there to support. They have different drivers that result into turning whatever advertisements they have to actual customers and profit. So there is still a difference, because I can go to watch women's football, not because it's particularly interesting, but just because I want to support the women's game. But instead of the women focusing on improving their game, improving the inputs, and driving genuine interest, they are asking for charity and entitlements. They are going about it the wrong way. And
because
here's
the
another thing.
The men's league has been around for how long?
Yeah, soccer has been on, but let me just finish this point. Mm-hmm. To understand the absurdity of all this, almost everyone thinks that their salary is not enough. They think that their salary should be increased. Almost everyone thinks that. But what stops you from approaching your manager and saying, you know what, we are 8 hours every day together here. I do 8 hours, you do 8 hours. same company name, everything. I was even hired earlier before than you. Let's get paid the same amount of money, or maybe not the same amount, but increase my salary. What stops you from asking for a salary increase? It's because within you there is an understanding that if I ask too much, it's going at some point it's not going to be worth it to the company. That someone else will accept the amount of money I'm getting and replace me.
Yeah.
You have that understanding that the price of labor is not set arbitrarily. You don't just get to choose how much you want to be paid. If it worked like that, we would all choose $1 billion salaries. But the salary that women are getting is not chosen arbitrarily. It's corresponding to the value that they bring, and they have to understand that.
And I think I would like to wrap this up, but I think, like I told you, to go to the first thing that I said initially, we're looking at this the wrong way.
Yeah.
We're looking at this as if inequality is a bad thing. You see, the goal in society now is about equity. You hear this being said everywhere.
People. Which I told, number one is practical or even a good thing.
Number one, I told you it's that someone might have to help me out with this one, but I think it's inherently like a female value, right? And also, it's very evil to its core. It's from the devil, or it's from whoever you think it comes from, who's bad, some evil spirit somewhere. Why do I say that? Because it's like walking into a classroom. You introduce you're a teacher or you're a professor. Tomorrow we have a test, and people go and prepare. They have equal opportunity to prepare, and some don't. They get results tomorrow. And as the teacher, you say, whatever you guys got, you saw, someone is celebrating, they got 100%, someone got 0. And then you say, because of equity, I'm going to just make sure everyone has 50% because I'm taking from the kids that had more to give to the kids that don't have. You are satisfying whatever it is, the equity of outcome value, at the expense of the people that have worked within the rules to achieve that.
Yeah, you're being cruel to the other group.
Exactly. Everywhere we look at in society, there's inequality. It's part of us, and it's actually needed, because if it wasn't there, then people would not be motivated to do 14 years of doctor, like professor college school. Why would you put yourself through all that if there would be equal outcomes at the end of it?
Yeah,
Why would be a Jeff Bezos or a Steve Jobs almost work themselves to death? I mean, Steve Jobs worked himself to death. The stress, the amount of effort it takes to build companies and to build things is unnatural. It's not. It's natural. It's a wonder why most people go and try to build very difficult things, even though
because of the rewards
celebrated, but because there are rewards. We take away the incentive of you are going to get a higher reward. Why would anyone get up to do anything? If I knew that if I don't wake up and do anything with myself, I am probably going to get Beyonce, and everyone else will get Beyonce. Why would any young man try to work in life?
And even the value of a Beyonce that you get for doing nothing is not the same as the Beyonce that you do for working.
So inequality, like people look at it and they just assume it's an evil thing, and this thing like, oh yeah, we need to be fair. Where do you see fair?
Here's another.
Can you explain? I know you talk about inequalities from your Thomas Sowell perspective. Can you just, in some way, because I forgot most of the examples that he usually points out of where you find inequalities in life and in the world?
You see, there are inequalities everywhere. Like I cannot. Right now, I'm actually thinking which example to give you about.
I know the rivers.
How people are different.
I know.
Okay, I will not get into the inequalities that way. I think we have to wrap up this conversation.
Okay.
Maybe next time we'll actually talk. We'll do a video when we talk about the question: why are some countries poor, or why are some people poor and some people rich? Because it seems to be there seems to be a need to justify, like, how can somebody be a billionaire?
And the answer is always
It's always
Sinister.
greed. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
and-
we want to talk about that and to really explore, like, how does somebody end up being worth $200 billion while someone else doesn't even have food? How does that happen? We'll explain that and tell you that and get into the nuances of this conversation. But about these pay differences, which we want to end for just for today, right? There seems to be an assumption that wealth exists somehow, and what has to be done now is to distribute it to people. So the women are assuming that there is money somewhere and it has to be paid to us too.
Just has to be
Where
given
did
to
that
us.
money come from? Nobody even asks that question. There is no distribution of income. Like as they say, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. The distribution of income is inequitable. No, nobody distributes. Of course, some income is distributed. If you're talking about social security checks, for example, money that is dispensed from the government and all that stuff, right? It's distributed from a central location. But if you're talking about pay, that pay is not distributed, it's earned. People earn income by exchanging their services, their labor, goods, things like that, and then they earn income. So wealth, before we talk about let's distribute wealth, let's give people this and so on, where do we even get the initial amount of money that has to be distributed? Somebody has to work for it. Capital has to be put there. Skills, labor, all those things, they have to be integrated to create wealth, and then it has to be distributed. And there is a lot that get into it. That is why I really feel we have to talk about why are some people poor and why are some countries poor and some countries will never be rich, is because of this kind of thinking, and we'll get into that. Just as one last example of why we end up having pay inequalities, right? If you think about some occupations where women actually earn more than men, right? There never seems to be an uproar about that. I'll give you one example. Modeling. Bella Hadid, or one of those Hadid girls, who earn multiples of what Justin Bieber, another model, will get. Multiples. Just because in the modeling industry, women are valued more than men when it comes to modeling. If you look for another example, like for example, in the porn industry, actresses, women, they earn more. Why are you laughing? It seems as if this is the first time you've heard about porn. It's a billion-dollar industry.
I'm just...
But I want to talk about this because it's important. But why? Why does that thing? There never seems to be a crusade about equalizing those things.
Can't take you seriously on this one.
No, take my point. But we understand that men and women offer different things in different areas, in different categories. There are some jobs that women are preferred than men, and vice versa. And because of those differences, you end up earning different things because you are doing different things in the end. Bottom line...
I would like to know how much female secretaries get paid versus male secretaries.
Yeah, I don't think there will be much of a difference there.
I don't think there's much male secretaries.
I think what we could want to look at are not only the differences in pay, but the differences in occupations. For example, when people complain that why are there fewer women engineers and things like why are there fewer women doctors and things like that, we can get into the decisions that people take and what leads to that. Is it really sexism or there's something else at play? Then we can look at that. But in the end, there is nothing called equity in pay. Why do you want to get equity in pay?
There's no equity whatsoever.
Yeah. It's a mirage. It can never exist.
Yeah. No, you know what? This has been a very long, drawn out conversation about this because we felt we need to really disprove some of these assumptions and take our time to explain them rather than just go over them, hastily or, in a very quick manner, and sometimes be misconstrued or be misunderstood by people. But what do you think? Do you think we have this wrong? Do you think the calls for pay equality in sports are actually warranted? Do you think inequality is such a bad thing? Do you think that the points we've been making are way off? The comment section is there. We'd like to hear from you guys. Engage with us, like, subscribe to the channel, and we would like to hear from you.
Yeah.
The 2 Decent Blogs, we out though.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.